We are live.
Hi there, for those of you who are about to join us. This is another edition of Esoteric Hours. Bradley Powers presents Esoteric Hours with my co-host Jim Andre, alien abductee and psychic healer. He is actually a quantum healer, but we're not allowed to publish that he's a quantum healer because the word quantum healer has been copyrighted. Therefore, we have to call him a psychic healer. Okay?
I'm an energetic.
And
I say I'm an energetic healer.
Energetic healer. I like that a lot, actually. That's very good. And also, we have a special guest for us, a very famous special guest, actually, Preston Dennett. Preston Dennett is an UFO and UFO researcher. Thank you for joining us, Preston Dennett.
Welcome aboard, Preston.
Thanks, Bradley. Thanks, Jim. It's nice to be back.
Yeah. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. And I'm going to start sharing the show. So what I'm going to do is hand the show over to Jim.
Any new research, Preston, since we talked to you last?
Oh, yeah. I'm keeping busy. I think it was, a year or two ago we last spoke.
Right.
Since then, I've put out a couple of new books. One is called Symmetry, A True UFO Adventure. That's my latest book, which is really different from any other book I've written in that it's about one single person's experiences, I should say. A lady by the name of Dolly Safran, who is a fully conscious contactee.
Wow.
She did have missing time as a young girl, but at age 14, she had a really dramatic experience, which she was able to recall consciously.
That's unusual.
Yeah. I've talked to hundreds of people who've had these experiences, and most have missing time. But following that experience, she's had many, many encounters, and has always remembered them without the aid of hypnosis. And I can tell you that in my own experience, it's the most extensive case I've ever investigated, and really even read about, for that matter. So I'm pretty excited about that. And I also put out a book called Wondrous, which is a collection of about 15 first-hand accounts of all types.
Wow.
Yeah, including government whistleblower accounts, a few I've been sitting on for a while. So a really interesting USO sighting, some very interesting sightings, and of course onboard experiences, which are my favorite.
Right.
I think those have the most information to learn.
Well, those are the most profound, I guess. But I somehow feel that the government is going to come up with some type of false flag with all this. I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I can't help but feel that.
Yeah, well, that is the buzz of the UFO community. I'm certainly worried about it. I think it's evident that there has been a sort of fear-based narrative being put forth by the media for years, decades. And with the recent congressional hearings here in the U.S., which were really a joke. They lied through the whole thing.
Right.
But
that's typical. They've been doing that since the get-go.
But they did say for the first time, really in recorded history, that UFOs are real and could be extraterrestrial.
And that's what I'm basing my theory on, because I believe they're up to something.
I agree.
Today, with all the technology they have with holograms, and they can make it look like there's spaceships in the sky firing weapons, when in reality it'll be the military firing weapons, and the craft itself will be a mere hologram.
Yeah. Well, they said in the congressional hearings that UFOs may represent a national security threat, which I don't think is really supported by the evidence.
If they had ill intentions and wanted to obliterate us, they would have done that a long time ago.
Yeah, we would know. But yeah, I agree with you, Jim, regarding the holograms and the holographic technology, because you can see this in various billboards and advertisements around the world. And
oh yeah, they got technology now. You can see Michael Jackson at a concert like he's right there, and obviously he isn't. It looks so real.
Yeah, and we do have this ET technology reverse engineered to a certain extent. The TR-3B is a good example of what is often mistaken for a UFO.
I think the stealth came from from their technology too, didn't it?
Yep. I think you're probably right. I don't personally have firsthand knowledge of that, but I'm following it quite closely because, I think there could very well be what we would call a false flag.
Yeah.
And I am worried about it because I just don't trust our governments. I don't.
Well, today, even today, if they wanted to obliterate us, I don't think we're not a match for them anyway. For the extraterrestrials, you know what I'm saying? With all the technology we have, I don't believe that we're a match for them.
Yeah, I agree. And it makes zero sense. I mean, if you were a advanced, extraterrestrial species that had access to basically the entire universe, are you really going to come to Earth?
Another thing with that is that we're not good to ourselves. You know what I'm saying? In other words, we compete against each other. We have no one to fear but ourselves. And then with our intelligence or lack thereof, we build devastating weapons to protect us from no other than ourselves.
Yes.
Does that make any sense?
We have some growing up to do. That's for sure. But as far as the so-called alien threat, to me, I think there is an alien threat to the government's power structure.
Right, exactly.
That's the threat.
And I will tell you, I don't know if you know much about my incident or my experience or story, but I can say that them Georgia Guidestones were damaged by the Zeta Reticula, and that was a message to the 1%. They know that. Of course, they're not going to say anything about it. And what the Zeta Reticula is really against is them using that hadron collider, that atom smashing collider, because they keep increasing the energy on that, right? Every time they refire it. So, and according to the Zeta Reticula, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're playing with. They have no idea.
We have a long history of abusing technology, and I know that people who are taken on board craft often get the message about that, particularly when it comes to nuclear materials, but definitely our warlike ways, our destruction of the environment. This is probably the number one message people.
I just can't wrap my head around why we would have to build such devastating weapons to protect us against ourselves. That's just, it's not funny, but when I stop to think about it, I have to laugh.
Yeah. I think people who feel like the ETs are here to take over are really just imposing their own cultural beliefs, their own fear-based narrative.
Yeah, we're not good to ourselves, so why would they even want to come here and mingle with us in the first place, right? We don't know how to treat each other, never mind them.
Yeah, we're the ones who kill millions of people, not them.
That's right.
And we were talking earlier before the show about a lot of missing people on this planet, which is something that is definitely going on. There's probably multiple causes, as you said, human trafficking.
Oh, yeah.
People running away. But I don't know. There's an awful lot. And I can tell you that I talked to a lady up in Michigan, Maine, a contactee. And the ETs told her flat out, and this is almost a direct quote, if people should go missing from your planet, it's being done by us for the universal good.
There you go. Yeah, I've often thought of that. And, well, being taken off planet. I guess I don't know how they choose who they're going to take, but
hey, I'm ready to go.
I don't think it's a bad thing.
No, there's one account that I published in my book, Wondrous. A guy interviewed by the name of Tony had gone out with a group of friends camping in the high desert in Southern California. They had a little cabin out there. One of them did. This was a group of, 6 or 7 friends, 19, 20, 21, 22. And they go up there regularly. Well, one weekend they were out there, and one of the friends, his name is Paul, that is his real name, disappeared.
Paul the movie,
He disappeared, and everyone's like, where the hell is Paul? They were getting ready to send out, a little search party to find him, because it was
Right.
late at night. And finally, he comes walking back in after a couple of hours and says, "Guess what, guys? While I was out there hiking, I came upon a landed UFO." And he
Wow.
described this pretty extensive encounter. He said this object was on the ground. He walked up to it. There were human-looking ETs, largely human-looking. They were bald and had large dark eyes, but could have passed for human with sunglasses and a hat.
Right.
He said they wore white jumpsuits. They invited him on board. It was very friendly. Inside, it was very white, very clean. They told him they were studying the wildlife in this area. And after talking to him for a while, they invited him to go with them and said that if he did, he would not be able to return.
Oh, wow.
And he declined the invitation. But when he left, they said, "Well, we're going to be back here 1 year from today, on this day. So if you want to return, we will be here. And if
Wow.
you change your mind, you can come with us." And long story short, that's exactly what happened. A year went by. He started giving away all his belongings.
Yeah. Wow.
And, the guy interviewed Tony's asked him, "Are you seriously thinking of driving out there?" And Paul's like, "Yeah, And Tony said, "Are you going with them?" And Paul said, "Well, I don't know. I might." But he drove out there and didn't come back. So Tony and his friends and Paul's family went out there, found Paul's car. The keys were still in it, but Paul was never found again. The police were called. It was a huge missing persons case.
Wow.
So there's no actual proof that he went with the ETs, but it's pretty clear that's what happened.
Did they search the area where his car was to see if there was any clues as to whether a craft landed on the grass or anything?
Yep. A long search ensued. There was no footprints leading to anywhere that they could find.
Was there any indication of a craft landing there, like any scorched area in the grass or anything like that?
No, I'm not sure that the extension or the investigation was that extensive, because before he had walked, couple of miles out into the desert.
Oh, I see.
So it's possible there was evidence that wasn't discovered, but as far as I know, they did not find any indication of what had happened to him. But they all told the police the same story like this, and this is what Paul told us.
Wow, that's amazing. How long has he been missing now?
Well, let's see. That was 1978. So
wow.
That's some 40 years almost.
Wow.
Longer, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with us, Preston. I'm just going to do a sweep of the forum. I just wish to do some shout outs and say thank you to Jason Horspool, Steve Barr, Jason Horspool, Craig Boy Horn, Michael Kennedy, Benny C. Trent, and Candy Fowler is in the house. Thank you for joining us, Candy. Thank you, everybody. And for anybody that I've missed out, thank you for joining us. I'd like to reintroduce our guest. This is Preston Dennett. He's a UFO researcher and an author. And when I say author, how many books have you actually wrote, Preston?
Let's see, it's 29 books at last count. I'm about to put out another one in a month or two, so that'll be 30. And I've got more lined up after that.
And what I'm suggesting to all those following us is if you are interested in UFO research, and Preston Dennett is an author, then he is definitely a man that you should follow because he will locate what you're looking for. So Preston Dennett is on Facebook if you wish to add Preston Dennett as a friend. He also has his own YouTube channel called, what's it called, Preston?
UFOs and the Paranormal. Yeah, with Preston Dennett.
UFOs and the Paranormal with Preston Dennett. He currently has around 8,000 subscribers. So obviously there's plenty of action there from Preston Dennett. So please tune in to this guest of ours because it's an honor to have him on the show. And there are a few questions. Michael Kennedy says, there remains a huge dark obliquity in control of our reality. Oligarchy in control of our reality. The military-industrial complex hold the keys. And Benny C. Trent says, hello to the three wise men. We are three wise men. What an honor. And Craig Boy Horn says, take me to the Arctic. I want to go through these 2 ice walls. And I've got a call to make in a minute. It's Jim, you can take over.
All right. Michael Kennedy says Preston has studied countless credible encounters. The evidence is overwhelming as reflected in our past, our present, and current interest. Jeremy Corbell, we live in a world where UFOs have been stated by our own government are real, but act ignorant of it. Ongoing study.
Yeah, the recent congressional hearing was definitely a step forward, but it was pretty disappointing. They're studying only sightings, ignoring Roswell, the crash at Roswell, ignoring the many landings, ignoring the thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of cases of people who've been taken on board or had missing time.
Well, how about that? How about that? What was it? Orson Welles invasion.
Yeah.
What was that called? Do you remember that? I think that was in like 1938.
Yeah, the War of the Worlds broadcast.
War of the Worlds, yeah. and it was a radio broadcast. People took it as being real. And some of them, they were so frightened they went on to commit suicide.
Yeah, that's often pointed to, like, are we ready for contact? And because that caused a mass panic. But you have to remember that was fiction for one thing. It was essentially presented as a sort of horror story. It wasn't true, and I don't think that's how people would react today. This is a subject that's saturated our media. It's, if you look at the top 10 grossing movies, many of them involve ETs.
And I guess not long after that, when was Area 51 there or Roswell?
Right, 1947, July.
1947, yeah.
Yep, not long after that, less than 10 years.
I'd like to add to that story. I don't know what your feelings are on this. Have you ever heard of Aleister Crowley, Preston Dennett?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Well, he opened quite many portholes, maybe a dozen, and he never closed them. He went around doing this deliberately. And what happened is, after this, maybe a year or two after the Roswell incident occurred, but people began to have UFO sightings after he opened the portholes. He clumsily didn't close one properly, and it caused a gash in the cosmos. And this has never been repaired. So the gas is still in the cosmos, of course, allowing all kinds of negative energies to come through, as well as UFOs. This is what has been written, and in the occult, and the occult don't really lie. It's written by wise men. What do you think about that, Preston?
Well, I've certainly looked into the works of Aleister Crowley, and there are a number of people who feel like the UFO phenomena is demonic in origin, or for that matter, angelic. And so I studied demonology extensively, and I do think it's a real phenomenon. There's no doubt about that. But it manifests in a very sort of well-known pattern with knockings on the walls and apparitions, and it sort of grows into a very nasty haunting. And
well, I think that they've been around a lot longer than that. I mean, from thousands of years ago. The Anunnaki and all that. I mean, long before.
Yeah, the evidence that UFOs and extraterrestrials have been around for millennia is pretty strong.
Long
Michael Kennedy.
Long before Aleister Crowley.
Yeah, I don't think
Michael Kennedy would like to add that Preston, he's familiar with you, Preston. Michael Kennedy says Preston has studied countless credible encounters. The evidence is overwhelming, as reflected in our past, our present and current interests. Jeremy Corbell, we live in a world where UFOs have been stated by our own government are real, but act ignorant of its ongoing study. Okay. Yeah. That's Michael Kennedy. He says Preston Dennett is on YouTube and has many excellent episodes. So please, once again, I say for all those watching, tune in to YouTube to subscribe to Preston Dennett. He's on YouTube, 8,000 subscribers, and he's also on Facebook as well, author and UFO researcher. Thomas Lynch says, when I think of the deliberate ignoramics towards us and the ET community, I imagine plenty of pain towards them while remaining light-hearted and in love. Okay, and that's thank you, Thomas Lynch, for sharing that. Michael Kennedy says, Orson Welles' radio broadcast that you speak of is a symbol for the internet now. Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Very good point, Michael. He also says, as evidence of how a person can sway social media and turn the internet upside down to believe whatever its special interest wants. Benny C. Trent says, Science and Satan, Alistair Crowley did open a portal with L. Tom Hubbard. Yeah, that's right. Well done, Benny. Well done for sharing that with us. Thomas Lee says, when I think of the deliberate ignoramics towards us when I think of the deliberate ignoramics towards us and the ET community, I imagine plenty of pain towards them while remaining like, I've just read that. Sorry about that. I thought I read it. It's coming up twice. And Candy Fowler is asking a question. What do you think about Jeremy Corbell?
Well, I support anyone who is willing to, speak forward about these subjects. And it's apparent that there is a government cover-up, and any whistleblower that has the courage to come forward and state that this is real and our government is covering up has my support. I do know that there is a deliberate misinformation campaign, and we are being lied to about the nature of this phenomena. So I'm wary of all the things that are being put out. But yeah, I think it's very important that people start paying attention to the fact that so many whistleblowers are out there really risking quite a bit.
Better off doing your own research.
This cover-up is no joke. People have lost their lives over it.
Absolutely. Whistleblowers, I have interviewed many whistleblowers and they go missing, or they suddenly are discovered having committed suicide when they seemed very healthy in their spiritually balanced, and they've gone missing or committed suicide. And this is very unusual, but this is what happens to whistleblowers who reveal the truth. Michael Kennedy says, Jeremy Kenyon, Lockyer, Corbell is on a different level working with George Knapp and releasing much of the data that we know to this day. Thank you for that, Michael.
I haven't had the opportunity to speak with Jeremy Corbell, but I have talked to George Knapp, and he's done some really good work. He's one of few mainstream journalists who have risked his career. He suffered badly because of it, too. But he broke
How about Art Bell?
Art Bell, yeah. His show was the #1 show in the world for years.
But something scared him off towards the end there. As a matter of fact, he went as far to tell George Norrie not to mention his name in the credits anymore. Do you remember that?
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of that, but I was on his show I think 3 times.
Oh, you've been on Coast to Coast?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
With Art Bell. I've been on it since then. But he was a really nice guy, and I think did very important work in popularizing this subject.
Right.
When really no one else was talking about it. And now look at today. It's one of the most popular subjects on the internet. And there are so many reality shows now. It's in the mainstream news. 60 Minutes did an episode on UFOs.
Yeah.
That was unprecedented. So we're really making great strides forward. And it's very encouraging to see how many whistleblowers are coming forth. I did have the opportunity to talk to one guy who was in the hospital on his deathbed when he contacted me. I published his story in my book, Wondrous. And he was actually a subcontractor for the military and was working on a project at Edwards Air Force Base when he walked by a hangar with an open window and heard this loud buzzing noise, and looking through the window saw a UFO hovering inside the hangar. There were cables and stuff attached to it, but he turned to his employer and said, "What's that?" And his employer says, "Shut up, I'm not allowed to talk about this."
Right.
And it was a year later that this same employer called him back for another job. And the guy interviewed says, "No, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it unless you tell me what we saw." And after going out to lunch with him and having a few beers, he got him to spill the beans. And this guy said that that was not a UFO that he saw, but was a reverse engineered government project taken from ET technology.
Right.
And that this was a craft that used counter-rotating magnetic fields to create sort of a magnetic field that would propel the craft in the desired direction.
Right.
So it's
Well,
clear we do have this
I
technology.
also heard that some of them crafts are psychically controlled by mind, by thought wave.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, because in my latest book, Symmetry, with Dolly Safran, they taught her how to fly these craft at her request, which may sound unusual, but it's really not. I've got a number of cases where people have been shown how to fly these craft, and she, made this her life's work, really. And
Yeah,
that's exactly true. These
and
craft are flown psychically.
Yeah, and there's a couple other sources there that claim that they've been in that area there where they've seen they look just like a UFO in the hangar, and it was a hologram, but it looked so real that they couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I'm really concerned about that. There are some researchers who feel like the Phoenix Lights, a very famous place over Arizona, was in fact a holographic projection,
right.
Which is something I think we need to seriously consider the possibility of.
Also, what do you think about this? Some spacecrafts, they are actually living entities. A whole ship is alive. It has a conscious mind of its own.
Yes, many contactees have said that, and that's exactly what Dolly Safran told me. It was really encouraging to hear her testimony, because she was able to answer a lot of questions, being a fully conscious contactee. And she said that's exactly true. The craft, as a rule, are alive, are embodied by an entity which flies these craft. So there's biological components to all of them, and they are flown psychically.
Benny C. Trent says the government has splintered, and the whistleblowers are telling about how deep are above what's called majestic, which is overclassified, and most presidents are not briefed in their research. Is it possible that members of the government, the prime minister, the president, are not fully aware themselves to the actual truth, the concept of how real extraterrestrials and the existence of aliens are? Do you reckon?
I believe so. That's where the black op programs are all about.
Yeah, that's what the research is showing us. Presidents, remember, are elected officials. Here in the U.S., they have 4 years in office maximum.
Well, I know President Eisenhower knew they existed, obviously.
Oh yeah, I think he was probably
Laura Eisenhower. She's pretty good. You must know Laura, right?
Oh, well,
yeah.
I've spoken at conventions where she was also speaking, but definitely Eisenhower knew. There's the very famous 1954 incident at Edwards Air Force Base. So he was in the loop. There's no doubt about that. But really, this cover-up is being run by the military-industrial complex, the highest levels of our military, who are not elected officials. So they are the ones who are, I think, behind the cover-up, in the loop, and the presidents are only aware of it to a certain degree. I know Senator Barry Goldwater tried real hard to get into the so-called Blue Room,
right?
And which is where we supposedly contain a lot of ET technology, and he was told flat out, "No, you are not in the need to know category."
I know Hitler was also privy to alien existence.
Yes, there's quite a bit of information about that as well. I know that a lot of our world leaders are aware of what's going on, but they're largely powerless to do anything about it, because as much as we'd like to think that presidents and so forth run the country, they don't. It's
I would suggest
they're puppets
the shadow government.
They're puppets
shadow
on
government in the country.
The
shadow government are not elected officials.
Preston, what are your thoughts about Phil Schneider?
I wish I knew one way or another. It's a pretty alarming case, and how it all rolled out towards the end makes me think there's probably, where there's smoke, there's fire. But I honestly could not tell you. I don't have first-hand information on that case. I only know it's in the public arena. It's a pretty concerning story, and a good example of what can happen to people who come forward with this kind of information. So I don't know. I don't think the ETs, generally speaking, are malevolent or here to take over. I don't have any good evidence of that. So I don't know about some of what he says, but
the most malevolent I can think of are the Archons. I haven't heard anything nice about them, and they are here to create chaos in the minds of humanity. I don't know what your thoughts are now.
I think a lot of the negative. I think a lot of the negative encounters that we hear about are actually what we would call MILABs, military abductions, which is, using mind control technology and so forth, are staged events, which people are victims of, unfortunately. And this is how they are putting forth this fear-based narrative that ETs are here to take over.
Right.
And they're not. Having interviewed hundreds of people, I can tell you, yes, it can be very scary. But
I'm glad you said that, because I always say that to Bradley, that that it could be the furthest from the truth.
Yeah, I mean,
talking of cover-ups, Benny C. Trent says L. Ron Hubbard was into the same things as Crowley. He had witnessed UFOs in USO before the 1946 crash, but the Roswell was the new mastery of the cover-up. That's what he's saying. So UFOs were people were aware of it.
There were UFO crashes.
Actually pictures of UFOs in painting.
That's right.
Yeah.
There were UFO crashes that
and in
predated
paintings,
Roswell.
famous paintings. Yeah.
Yeah, throughout the Renaissance and the Middle Ages, there's at least a dozen very well-known cases, several more than that, but that clearly show what are UFO craft, solid craft, sending out beams of light with portholes, little figures inside. That's good evidence that something was going on for many, many hundreds of years.
Yeah, millennia. Do you reckon? I reckon there's been alien abductions for millennia too, as well as probably prehistoric man as well was even abducted as well, along with cattle and stuff.
One abduction case that I believe to be authentic is Barney and Betty Hill.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, they were an interracial married couple, and back in the early '60s, that was taboo. The last thing they would want to come out with is anything so bizarre to, get any unwanted or unnecessary attention upon themselves. They'd have to be out of their minds to do that, right?
Oh yeah, I'm sure this has been going on for a very long time. Though it does seem like what we're seeing now with the large numbers of people reporting onboard experiences is largely historically unprecedented.
Preston, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is important to me. I'd like to confer with you, like, privately someday about what I've experienced.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to.
All right, and coincidentally, the Bonnie and Betty Hill abduction, they were abducted on September 19th, 1961, which was coincidentally my 8th birthday.
Ah, wow. Synchronicity.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because I don't believe in coincidences,
Yeah, what I find interesting about the Betty and Barney Hill case was this occurred before there was really any publicity whatsoever on this subject.
Right.
There was another case that was publicized before that, Antonio Villalobos, Antonio Villalobos, excuse me, in Brazil, South America, but it didn't receive a whole lot of publicity beyond UFO circles. And the Betty and Barney Hill case really was the one that introduced the world to what was going on. And following that, reports started coming in fast and furious. And they match very much what the Hills reported with the short gray ETs and the round rooms and physical exam and so forth.
Yeah.
There was also that phone call from that traumatized guy, and he said he was hysterical crying, saying they aren't what they claim to be. and then the radio cut off after he was explaining the extra dimensional beings. Do you remember that?
I remember that. Yeah, that
Yeah.
was on Coast to Coast. Yeah.
Yep. I've had people call me up crying about their encounters. There's a lot of people who are quite shook up. I think when this happens to you and you realize that everything you've been taught is a complete lie, it can be a collapsing sort of thing. I mean, that's what happened to me, actually. I came into this field as a complete skeptic in 1986. I heard a report on the news and found out that many members of my own family, my good friends, coworkers I'd worked with for years,
Right.
had these encounters. It was not good news. I was scandalized. It was very upsetting.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's hard for somebody, especially back then, to come out with it because they're only going to be ridiculed. You know what I mean? Who's going to believe it, basically?
Yeah. I was furious. I mean, this should have been taught in schools.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah.
Our government has badly bungled their handling of this subject.
Had they brainwashed us instead?
Well, it's all about control. That's what it's about.
Yep, that's the driving force behind the cover-up for sure. Greed, money, corruption.
Same thing with religion. All about
at school, we're taught how to exist, not to survive.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jim.
Well, the good news is the government cover-up is crumbling fast. It's not sustainable. There are so many whistleblower accounts at this point. I think that was really the driving force behind the disclosure movement. If our governments don't start disclosing, they will lose all credibility. They will lose all control of the narrative. And so I don't think they're doing it for our own good at all.
Eventually the truth will reveal itself.
Yes.
You
can distort the truth, you can try to hide it, but it takes care of itself. Exactly. You cannot destroy it.
Exactly.
Thomas Lynch says, "Hallelujah to the Arcturians, they are cleaning house." Do you think that's true?
I don't know that I have any information on that or exactly what that means.
That's a big one. Michael Kennedy says, "The main precedence that we are not alone today is one built from a history of foggy notions, meant to dissuade the knowledge our government has long possessed. The release of the Go Fast, the Tic Tac and the Gumball videos were a military eyewitness as well as instrumental documentation, and countless other examples of similar events only shows that these things have the ability to do as they will. If their intent was malevolent, our studies have only shown that we are unable to persuade of." Okay, thank you for that. Well, that was quite a read, wasn't it?
Yeah, huge shout out to Michael. I'm really encouraged to see that so many people are taking an interest in this phenomena, and our governments do know exactly what's going on, despite their denials. They've known long before Project Blue Book. Project Blue Book was an official government study that said there's absolutely nothing to this. Pay no attention to those things in the sky. If you think you saw a UFO, it's either a hoax, a hallucination, or a misperception.
And and whatever information that you ask for and they do release, a certain percentage of it is redacted anyway. So what are they really giving you?
Yeah, well, the Navy just recently released a statement saying that the release of any or all of their UFO videos would be a huge threat to national security.
Yeah, right.
And it's not. It's a threat to their power structure, their enslavement of humanity.
Yeah, no. What are your thoughts now with the other armed branch of service we got now? What was the Space Force?
Yeah, well, I think to a certain extent that's inevitable. I mean, we have because if we do have this technology, if we do have the ability to do space travel, and we do to a certain extent, it's only, I think, a logical conclusion that at some point we are going to have a space force. And if you know about Gary McKinnon, remember the hacker who broke into NASA archives and databases, found some very interesting information about this sort of thing. I think it's quite likely that there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. So I think the Space Force is only a logical step forward. But what we really need with this subject is, openness, truthful,
Right, exactly.
transparency. And until that happens,
you'll never get that from the government. Never.
nope, not voluntarily, that's for sure.
Benny C. Trent says the government has splintered and the whistleblowers are telling about how the deep ops are above what's called majestic, which is overclassified, and most presidents are not briefed in their research. Thank you for that, Benny C. Trent.
Yeah, that's
Here's a question. Go on, answer, please.
Yeah, that's what's actually really encouraging, I think, is the people who are behind this cover-up. From my understanding, from all the research that's being done by many researchers and all the information that's coming out from whistleblowers, there's quite a bit of disagreement, and there are many within the cover-up community, the folks who are within the shadow government or black ops, who don't want to continue this cover-up, and it's the old guard that's trying to hold on to it, whereas the newer people are saying it's time for truthfulness and transparency. So hopefully, as the years roll by, we'll get, a real honest to God steps towards disclosure.
Preston, did you ever connect with Travis Walton at any time?
I
did speak to him briefly when we were.
I believe that's another authentic incident.
Yeah, I have a private messenger group called Esoteric Family, and Travis Walton is a member, a guest in my group. So I'm very honored to have him.
I really feel for him, because here's a guy who had an onboard experience, and he had 5-6 witnesses who saw the craft,
right?
And very close.
And they all passed polygraph tests more than once.
And to this day, that case is still being viciously attacked by debunkers and skeptics.
Oh yeah, of course.
Stephen Pierce is a witness to what the Travis Walton abduction. He was a teenager at the time, and he saw what happened. We've had him on our show, Esoteric Hours. Stephen Pierce. He's also a friend of mine on Facebook.
Yeah, there was a recent documentary on the case where all the gentlemen were interviewed again, and all are still sticking by their story. It's absolutely an authentic case, and Philip Klass tried desperately to debunk it, unsuccessfully, I think. It's an incredible case, and I think one of the best authenticated cases out there.
Candy Fowler is asking a question for you, Preston. Would you say that the living craft are human merged with machine?
Well, not in a way that they're like the Borg from Star Trek or anything, but yeah, these craft are flown psychically. So when a person goes on board and learns how to fly this, they are able to hook up with it mentally, spiritually, psychically, to a degree that there is a real symbiosis going on there. But it's not like a malevolent thing in any way, I don't think. And having talked to a number of contactees who've had this experience, it's something that they've found very spiritually transformative and enlightening and good for them.
Candy also says the Betty and Barnett, I think she means Betty and Barney Hill case, scared the living daylights out of her.
Yeah, that was the first case again. There's so much fear surrounding the subject, and unfortunately there's a lot of reasons for this. There's a very clear agenda on the part of our governments to...
Yeah, well, you also got to take into consideration this fear of the unknown. That's a natural occurrence, a fear of the unknown.
Yeah, I totally agree. A lot of people, especially contactees who had a lot of experiences initially, do experience a lot of fear with their encounters, but the majority that I've talked to, at some point, get over that and start having more
that's
fully
like
conscious
myself.
encounters.
That's like myself. I've accepted it 100%, and since my experience, my views of life, nature, the universe, or the big picture, if you will, have totally changed.
Yeah, I wrote a book.
And I'm comfortable within my own skin,
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to people who have had negative encounters or feel it's negatively affected them. And I know this does happen. Not everyone feels like this is a good thing for them. there's a bell curve, certainly in how people react. But if you look objectively at what actually happens to people who are taken on board, the scariest thing that I find with most people is this physical examination.
Right.
And that's honestly when people are, the purpose of that is a checkup. People are being physically healed. And I wrote a book about this called The Healing Power of UFOs. It presents 300 cases, which is a lot. And that's the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
And these cases are coming from pretty much every major researcher across the world. Michael Hesselman, Timothy Good, Philip Mantle, Bud Hopkins had cases, John Mack, David Jacobs, Edith Fiore. I mean, I could go on and on.
Right.
This is a regular, consistent feature of UFO contact that is not getting any attention because it doesn't fit the government's fear-based narrative.
Exactly.
But this is what is actually happening to people who are being laid out and examined. They're being healed.
Yeah.
Also, I have interviewed many alien contactees and many alien abductees myself on Esoteric Hours, and I've discovered that quite a lot of them have got implants. And when they go to the doctor, the physician does not know how they got there, what they are, and like this surely actually enforces the possibility of alien abduction.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's absolute, the smoking gun proof. In fact, in my book, Wondrous, I presented a case from a lady in the Midwest, Indiana, who took her teenage son to the dentist. One day he was 14, and the dentist said, "What's this under your molar here?" It was a giant sort of BB, looked like a marble under his tooth.
Wow.
There was no entry wound. The tooth was asymptomatic. It was fine. But she sent me the x-rays, which I published in the book, and they clearly show what they thought was a foreign body. I sent these x-rays to 2 different doctors who both said, well, this is clearly not natural. It appears to be metallic. I would diagnose it as a foreign body. And this appeared.
Did they ever extract it?
The oral surgeon offered to do it, but the kid declined.
Wow.
He's having dreams about what we would call human-looking ETs.
Wow.
And his mother as well has had encounters with the Greys and also been taken on board, she believes. They don't think this is a negative experience for them.
No, I wouldn't think that either.
He's tremendously psychic. And it's interesting, Jim, that you talk about, being a healer, because this is one of the main things I see among contactees. They have very profound psychic abilities, whether it's healing or precognition or astral travel.
That's why I like one of these days, not to interrupt you. I'm sorry for doing that, but I'd like to talk privately with you and give you a little bit more information, and this is stuff that I can prove, people can attest to.
Yeah, there's absolute proof that these encounters are real, and implants is just one of them. And it really irks me when people say this is a psychological phenomena, or perhaps these are interdimensional beings wearing masks that are, spiritual in nature.
Yeah, and I guess some of them would describe them as demons, right?
Yeah, which, demons are a real phenomena, but that's not what's going on here. No. These are craft that appear on radar, that have been recovered by our military, that are lifting people up out of their homes. And implanting them. And the purpose of these implants, we as researchers have a pretty good handle on what the purpose is, because people have asked, the contactees have asked flat out, what is this implant for? And, the main speculation is that it's for tracking. But according to the ETs, it's mostly health related. And I have at least 4 cases personally, and I know of many others, where the ETs said that it's to measure the levels of pollution in your body, boost your immune system, monitor your vitals, this sort of thing, usually health related.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, because there's one gentleman that I've done healing sessions with over the internet, energetic healing sessions, and his name is Jim McFarlane. He actually got a visit from 3 Greys one night, and he can attest to that. But I'm going to let him tell you that story. I don't want to say it. I want to let him tell you that one of these days.
Yeah. I always enjoy hearing from people I'm glad that the subject is really being more accepted now, because years ago, and still now to a certain extent, people have no recourse.
Right.
There's very few people you can talk to. There's still a ridicule factor, a lot of disbelief.
And the reason for that visit he got was to heal him, because he had lung cancer, and this was about 2.5 years ago.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, in my book on the subject, I have some 30 cases of people healed of cancer, and this is great evidence. I mean, I can't tell you how many doctors are absolutely.
I mean, we could talk for the millennia, and there's going to be people out there that say, "Oh, we're crazy," or whatever. But
they'll find out.
Yeah, it is what it is,
Yeah. Kevin Cameron was someone that I interviewed. He had 10 implants in him, one on his forehead even. You could actually see it, And I've got a question for you, actually, from Candy Fowler. Preston, has any of your research brought your knowledge of the Orion group specifically, or what people call the tall greys?
Tall greys is one of the types of greys. There's mid-size, there's short little ones, there's AI greys. And according to a number of contactees, they do come from the Orion constellation, or one of the stars within the Orion constellation. But we don't know a whole lot about precisely where a number of these ET groups come from. And often they will give very coy answers, such as "it's not important," or we come from a place you don't know about yet, or they will avoid the question. Because of our warlike ways.
We did get a clue with the Zeta Reticula, though, didn't we, with Betty Hill?
Absolutely, and that comes
she
up.
She drew that star map, right?
Yep. But even then, she asked, "Where are you from?" And when she was looking at the star map, and the gray said, "Can you point to your own planet on this map?" And she said, "No." And then he said, "Well, then there's not much point in me telling you where we come from."
Yeah, but under hypnotic regression, though, she drew that star map, and they couldn't identify it. But a few years after she passed away, they found it, right?
Yeah, Marjorie Fish, a school teacher, did some excellent work on that, and that has come up in other cases. But yeah, I think the Orion cluster has been named in a number of contactee cases. In fact, in my book Symmetry with Dolly Safran, she said she was told specifically that that's where some of the greys do reside.
Wow. Yeah, Zeta Reticula. I know that's the ones I'm connected to.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I think honestly, there's life throughout our universe.
Oh yeah, endless.
Yeah. We like to think of it as something, vast and sterile.
Yeah, I mean, it's
I don't think it's like that
imagination. It's beyond concept, really.
Yeah. Well, one day we will be welcomed, I think, into the galactic community if we can overcome our warlike ways. And
well, we gotta first learn to be more, good to ourselves. That's our problem.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like I always like to give a quote from the Betty Andreasen case. She's a famous contactee from Ashburnham, Massachusetts, who was told by the Greys. One of the Greys told her flat out, "Love is the answer for humankind."
Right. That's right.
Which may sound idealistic and simple, but I agree.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. Love would solve so many of our problems. All the divisiveness.
That was the message from Jesus. Follow the message, not the messenger.
Exactly.
Are you religious? Well, probably not. Or spiritualist, agnostic?
Oh, me? No, I was not raised with religion. My parents rebelled against it when they were quite young, so that wasn't something I was brought up with. I've looked into it, but no, I would describe myself as spiritual. I've had a lot of paranormal experiences. I've had a lot of out-of-body experiences where I've been able to visit the other side and see deceased loved ones. So I know there is source, and
Oh yeah.
I don't think that God is an old man sitting on a cloud punishing people and sending them to hell.
My theory of a God is the energy that moves you, your consciousness, and the air that we breathe.
Exactly. To me, the God is life, the universe, and everything. It's
Right.
all of it.
Candy Fowler says, is the Zeta Reticuli partly Orion? I don't believe it is it? It's the Orion is you've got the Orion's belt, which I call a Sirius, Isis, and Apophis, and that's the Orion. But the Zeta Reticuli, I think it's another area, isn't that?
Yeah, it's a completely separate star
Is
system.
that a reticular or two binary star system?
Yeah. Well, we've been rolling for nearly an hour now, so I don't know what you want to do. Although we could talk to Preston for hours, probably. You've got so much information to share. It's really
very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this is an important subject. The day is coming. You might be skeptic.
Oh, yeah.
But the day is coming when everyone on this planet will know the truth.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true. It is coming. Yeah. Okay then. Yeah, Michael Kennedy says Preston is awesome.
Oh.
Yeah, we believe so. That's why he's on the show, of course.
That's why he's our guest.
We only have awesome guests, and they're all genuine, sincere, and Preston is sincere, and that's what we like about Preston. And Preston, would you like to promote any of your work?
Yeah. Thanks, Bradley. I appreciate it. I do, again, have a website. If you just punch my name in the internet, it should take you there. All my books, if you want to check them out, there are excerpts. You can purchase my books through my website or go directly to Amazon or other online retailers. I'm also on Facebook if you want to reach out to me. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, and I do have a YouTube channel because a lot of people don't have the time or energy to read books these days. So I'm putting out my research on my YouTube channel. So you can learn quite a bit there if that's, your preferred method of researching this kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate you guys having me on this show. You're doing important work. People need to start taking the subject seriously.
It was a pleasure having you on, Preston.
And I'd like to say Michael Kennedy has posted the link to your channel into the group forum, so that's good news. So, yes, you can reach Preston Dennett by following the YouTube channel link that Michael Kennedy has just posted into the show. Great conversations. Everyone's enjoyed it. Everyone's loved listening to what you had to say. So on that note, thank you for being with us, Preston. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I thank you for anybody who tunes into Esoteric Hours. Please like, subscribe, or share the show. And please go to YouTube to go to Preston, subscribe to Preston Dennett's channel. That's what my suggestion is. Thank you, everybody, for your contribution.
Okay, see you guys on the other side.
Okay, thank you, Preston. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye.